I'm curious to know how many of your clients, like what percentage of your clients actually come to you because they have not started with the end in mind and they're trying to correct something because they have an opportunity to get into Sephora or a retailer, right? And then the second part to that question is, what's the difference in cost and coming in on the back end when you need to make a correction versus doing it up front? Like, is it cheaper to do it up front and have it prepared, or is it like the same? But
Oh, those are good questions. About 50% of clients actually come to me because they realize that they've pitched to Target or whatever store it may be, and now they have to go back and do a lot of things. So whether the packaging, the primary packaging, so primary packaging is anything housing the product. So your tubes, your bottles, your tottles, jars, etc. So they realize that sometimes with the retail placement or big box stores or even boutiques, that primary packaging is not conducive, it's not going to be resonated well from their consumers. So a lot of times when clients come to me, we're having to do a lot of corrective action because of that. Now, second part of your question, in reference of the investment, it is better to capture these things up front, because when you're going through and you've already bought stock packaging, you've already printed your labels, you pitch into whoever it may be, even local boutiques and such, a lot of times they're going to tell you what is going to resonate for their consumers based upon that market and more. But a lot of times they tell you they're not able to take it because the packaging may be too big. I can't understand, or I can't read the labels. I don't know if this type of product is really conducive or a good fit into my product or boutique. So a lot of those things we actually look at, and it becomes more costly to the brands because, one, they've already invested into the packaging, they've invested into creation of the products or the formulations, they possibly worked with somebody previously, so they're now like, I've already spent the money, or the investment rather, but now I have to go and spend some more to get my stuff properly packaged for those corrective actions, which then leads to additional investment. So it's always better to, of course, think with the end goal in mind, but incorporate those at the beginning of your development. So you're not incurring more costs, additional lead times. Lead time is the duration of time from start to finish. And then also thinking about the end goal in mind. So I would say 50% clients come to me for corrective action. But then a lot of times, if you don't come to me in enough time, you could be spending a lot more money on the back end because we're having to do a lot of corrections for your product packaging replacement.
how long does it take from start to finish?
Oh, good question. It varies. And the reason I say it varies for creation of a product is because it depends upon who you're working with. So I'll give you an example. If you're working with a private cosmetic chemist, they're creating your formulation. They're then saying, okay, your formulation is completed after I go through stability testing. Stability testing is where you're actually testing your formulation in glass packaging to make sure that it is stable. And you have to do that for a minimum of 3 months for just stability. And that's for a non-OTC or a drug product. OTC and drug products have a longer testing period because you have to obtain the expiration date on it. But that's a whole nother segment. But if you're working with a private cosmetic chemist and they go through testing, your ideation and the formulation on average could take anywhere from 6 to 12 months or even longer, depending upon what type of product you're creating. 2, understanding the testing phase. Stability testing, minimum 3 months if it's a non-OTC or drug product. If it is a drug product or OTC, such as sunscreen or acne products, then your testing phase, you have to have minimum of 1 year real-time read just to make sure that you're able to capture the data and then be able to get your proper expiration date. And then you also have packaging compatibility testing. So if I work with a private cosmetic chemist and I want to have my formulation be housed inside of a tube, for instance, a PET tube with the airless pump or whatever, then I have to still go through testing, which is separate of stability testing. So that's minimum 3 months. So I'm sharing all this to say it can really vary. And we haven't even gotten to, if you're working with a contract manufacturer, line trials, pilot batches, fill and assembly, sourcing of your packaging. But if you look at the full picture, on average, it could take minimum 12 months of creation of your product. But that's where it's really important to understand that end goal in mind. So one of the 7 habits of highly effective people to really incorporate that as part of your strategic plan to then make sure you have enough time to buffer in all of the checkpoints and milestones to create your products. But minimum 12 months. It could be longer, it could be shorter, just given the nature of the product that's coming to market. But minimum 12 months, I would say.